Welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, episode 20. Earth's alarm bells are ringing. In this episode, the two hosts talk about the changes facing Earth as we go into the next big global shift in ecology. And now, the two guys who make CNN staff worry about their jobs, it's Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Radio Network. Take it away, boys!
Thank you, Carol. Lovely as always. Appreciate you so much. Hello to all my friends, foes, and assorted others out there. Welcome to another episode, our 20th edition. I believe that's right. Welcome to Earth Changes Radio, earthchangesradio.com, exclusively on paltalk.com, every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. If you are suffering from mental illness and or depression, please be advised, well, never mind. You're just going to have to deal with it tonight because we have some pretty disturbing information, and unfortunately, that is just the way that nature is. My first news story today is kind of urgent, and it's very important that people understand these avian flu outbreaks in North American poultry. This is a huge issue, and you can actually follow this online, track where the avian influenza outbreaks are, and in what poultry flocks in North America. And this is just for 2017. This is getting a crisis and epidemic levels. The avian flu outbreaks, if you've gone to the supermarket lately, trying to buy any ducks, turkeys, chickens, well, you can just imagine what the price and the availability is in this very tight poultry market right now. Over $2 a pound when you used to be able to buy the whole chicken for less than that. Asian avian flu, influenza A, has now been diagnosed as the H7N9 virus. Boy, these words, influenza or flu, and these are the most recent statistics from June 29th of 2017. You can find this also online, Asian lineage avian influenza at www at the cdc.gov/flu/avian flu. It's just very easy to find. You don't have to go to the CDC. You don't have to go to the World Health Organization because it is such an epidemic. It is known to everybody worldwide except for the American people. I wonder why that is, you lying, thieving bastards in the media. Why have not we heard of these things? That avian flu is now an epidemic in China, and they're at a level 1 watch. It just goes on and on and on. You can learn about this from the World Health Organization, although I don't like these governmental agencies. I prefer on the ground the institutions that are dealing with these, the farmers, the food stock industries. So, Steve, man, I'll tell you, we start to show off with some really serious, very, very serious, alarming news. Why don't we hear about this in our own media, Steve? Hey, today is July 11th. Welcome to the show, Steve, our other host. Good to hear from you, bud.
Well, a very good morning, a very good evening, a very good afternoon to all the listening audiences and to you, Mr. Earthplay, specifically. You know, I got to put out a shout-out to our sponsors today for the 20th show of Earth Changes Radio. That includes Organite by Mishkaites. Please do check them out on Facebook. It includes a Southwest Backpacker. It also includes BigWhoopMagazine.com. Sponsoring Earth Changes Radio to get this information out to the public. And one of the first stories I have for today is indeed something we've been talking about for years, and we talked about this with, I believe it was Professor Guy McPherson, about the 6th extinction, and that is now making breaking news on the media. It has only taken 2 or 3 months for our stories to suddenly make it to the news media, for the things we talk about to make it onto the headlines. And I mean, that's pretty good. Usually it takes years. Usually it takes a couple of years. But this time, What we've been talking about is only taking a couple of months to make it to the media. So I think that there is some hope yet that we will hear the alarm bells ringing about waking up to what's going on in the world and what's happening in space and what is indeed happening in our own cosmos in our backyard. A lot of people are starting to be more aware of what exactly is going on and what exactly we can do to mitigate the outcome and possibilities of a final extinction involving human beings, which I certainly hope does not happen. Good to see everybody there. I hope you're enjoying the show. Go ahead there, Earthplay, right about now, sir. The mic is yours.
And of course, yes, I just rushed right into the beginning of the show. A great shout out to Helen Michelle from the town of Gabrielle. And Matt, the Southwest Backpacker, one of our sponsors, is out of the hospital. As you remember, over the 4th of July, leading an expedition into the Continental Divide of the Rocky Mountains, did suffer a very serious leg injury from his knee to his ankle, requiring a couple of surgeries and 25 stitches. Well, Matt is out of the hospital. He's up and walking around as ornery as usual. I'll probably be seeing him this Friday. But you're absolutely right. You know, Matt's doing great. Steve, just since our last show, talking about the 6th Great Extinction, this is now, mind you, only the last 7 days. In China, in the Hangzhou region, are reporting a large die-off of fish in the river, that all the fish are dead, no reason. There's no nuclear power plants, uranium mines, or anything upstream that they can discern being the cause of this death. Also, more death. Steve, where the heck is the country of Gambia? In the nature preserve of southern Gambia, they have a massive die-off of fish as well. And in a lake in Minnesota, and it's not specific here, thousands of dead fish washing up on a lake in Minnesota. Thousands of fish wash up in a lake in Wisconsin. Alarming number of fish wash up in a lake in Ohio. These states are not next to one another, you may notice. This is just in the last week. 9 pilot whales have been found stranded along Taylor and Dixie County lines in Florida. Thousands of cattle have now died in a massive heat wave in California, just in the last week. Dozens of seabirds, hundreds of fish, plus turtles have been found dead on the beaches of Queensland, Australia. Hundreds of animals killed due to wildfires in Portugal. And I wonder how many animals have perished in all the fires that we've been having here in New Mexico and Arizona and Utah and California and Nevada, and the list goes on and on. Still, only for this week, we're still in this week, thousands of dead fish wash up again due to pollution in the waters off the coast of Brazil. Thousands of dead fish found along a dam in Turkey. Thousands of fish die in a canal in Wanne-Brevis, France. 300 dead turtles have now washed up this year. 1,200 found last year along the São Paulo coast of Brazil. This may be related to the thousands and thousands of dead fish. Also, hundreds of camels have died in the desert of Qatar. Now, I find this highly unusual, since this is the 3rd year in a row that those countries from Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jerusalem, the whole Middle East right now is experiencing snow, Steve, of all things. And the very last thing on my list here is 40 dead sea lions and 2 whales have been found along the coast of Peru. 292 known mass death events in 64 countries or territories just since the last airing of our last show, Steve.
Well, sir, Mr. Earthplay, just when you thought these stories couldn't get any worse, I've got one that can top them all. You thought it was bad. It's going to get even worse. We've had guys like Ronald Reagan as president, a bad American actor. A bad TV actor, I should say. And we've had Arnold Schwarzenegger as the governor of California. Well, now, believe it or not, somebody has put up Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to be the president in 2020. They've filed for draftings for him to become the president of the United States. Imagine that. A bad wrestling as a president, no, a bad wrestler and an actor. He is a pretty good actor, so I guess being in office isn't much different to being an actor in front of the screen, of course, because that's all presidents do. They act. They are paid actors. That's all any of them are. Any of these congressmen, senators, they are just actors in front of the TV screen. We have to remember that they basically don't have your interests at heart. They have their own interests at heart. And when they go in front of the TV screen, they are still acting. I certainly hope this does not come to fruition. It's bad enough having some of the clowns we've had as president, but having a TV star like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, oh gosh, yeah. He's got the popularity for sure, but does he know anything about politics? I don't think so. Your mic, sir.
Well, he probably would be better suited than a community organizer who was our last perpetrator in chief. And actually, I have a little bit of respect for The Rock because he had the fortitude, the balls, the guts to go on national television and sing a song to the presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, "You're an ugly bitch." So I think the guy's already won my heart there, Nephilim.
Well, okay, I can give him props for that. Definitely, I can give him some respect for doing that. So he's got some balls. I'll give him that for sure. Time will tell. We will see how it all pans out. It's interesting. Some of the water that is in our waterways is finding it hard to drink this stuff anymore because of exactly how toxic it is and how polluted it is and how many chemicals the government puts into it. But now it has been found that the school water, the water in the schools in California, has become just too dangerous to drink in the schools. So what we're doing here, we're poisoning everything in our society, including the water that our kids drink in their high schools. This is unbelievable. What are we doing to the planet? Well, it's not we. We aren't doing it to the planet. The corporations are. The useless governments are. The agencies that are in charge to make sure this does not happen are allowing it to happen. They're exacerbating it to make it happen. Go ahead there, Earthplay.
Well, you said a mouthful when you said California. Yeah, that would be part of the problem right there, California. Jerry Moonbeam Brown, buddy. Jerry Moonbeam Brown has single-handedly destroyed the entire damn state by his policies and his actions. Be it either the water or any of the other bullshit stuff that Jerry Moonbeam Brown has done out there in the state of California. And I can talk about the state of California. It's where I grew up at. But, yeah. Thank God I left there in 1991 before it became the liberal cesspool that it is now.
Okay, thank you for that, Rooster Pete. I guess anything could happen on live radio. We do invite our audience to come up to the microphone in our interactive chat room exclusively on paltalk.com. So if you're listening to this audio, watching the fantastic video put out by our producers, you can join us live every Tuesday night in our Ancient Observatory, our official Earth Changes radio show on Paltalk. And that was Rooster Pete who just came to the mic, and thank you for that, Rooster. We hope you come back to the mic more often. My next stories here, Steve, have to do with some of the drastic earth changes that are going on, and they're starting to get very noticeable even in the public sector. You don't need to be a geologist, a glaciologist, an environmentalist to see some of the great changes that are starting to occur all across the planet. And today is a perfect example of anomalies in earthquake activity. Today we had earthquake activity in New York, in the state of New York, along the Great Lakes. I think it was, I'm not going to be specific here, so I'm not even going to try here. Lincoln, Nebraska, for the 8th consecutive day, have just been pounded by swarms of small earthquakes. Of course, you remember this all started with a 5.8, and this is 100 miles or a little bit more outside the boundary, the official boundary of the Yellowstone National Caldera. So we are watching this with great intent, and there's a lot of activity coming out of Yellowstone. I don't know, Steve, if we would have enough time in the show to talk about the deformations, the bulging, the outgassing, the behavior of the geysers, the sulfur dioxides being released from the rivers and the fault lines, a startling lack of animals in the Yellowstone, and they give you many reasons for this. An unusually heavy snowfall last year. There's still snow on the ground there. A lot of animal deaths, of course, and migrating out of the snow zones for food. You know, there's a lot of reasons that they give you, but they never talk about the earthquake activity, the roads melting, portions of the park being closed, the Norris Basin, the North Basin of the Norris geyser system being closed to the public, Firehole Road melting, that's the one that goes right to the Yosemite and Old Faithful area. Just a lot of anomalies, but not enough anomalies to concern the park officials. These guys must have cojones made of stone. I don't know. But it is a little concerning. Not only that, we have had over the last week swarms of earthquakes in the Mammoth Lakes area of the Long Valley Caldera in California. Every single day between Mammoth Lakes and Hawthorne, Nevada, and that's the gap in the Sierra Nevadas between California and Nevada, which is very volcanic, has had a lot of swarms of earthquakes, including Oregon, Sweet Home, Oregon, reporting earthquakes today. Swarms around Packwood, Washington, the state of Washington, and they're not quite off of the hook because right to the north of their state in Euclid, Canada, swarms of Alaska, and of course up here in Whittier, Alaska, and in this zone of the Valdez of Alaska, those swarms have continued. A lot of activity to report. Large ones occurring again on the north and south plates on either end of Japan in a slip fault zone, and it looks as though this region of Chile is getting very active again. Of course, now this is the only portion of the planet where the geologists believe that the plates have become unstable. That would be the Cocos Plate, the South American plate, around from Panama, let's say, around Panama down to Chile, which is all sitting on a slip zone. We expect there to be large, catastrophic earthquakes there at least every 5 or 10 years. But it looks as though the pattern that we have been in, they've been coming every other year, 8.0, 7.0, and every year now that we've been having them in Chile, and we expect these to continue. Over here in New Zealand, these people have been incessantly pounded for the last 5 years. Other than that, New Zealand seemed to have been a pretty tranquil place to live. Well, the earth has come alive all the way around New Zealand, not to the north, not to the east, but now to the south of New Zealand. And in our next segment, we're going to talk about some really serious activity here. Some of the things I've been concerned about, Nephilim, in this volcanic activity, and the news that's going to be reported here just keeps getting more and more startling. So if you're a snowflake, this next segment is going to melt you. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Rick. You know, we do a lot of talking about what the changes are on the Earth itself, and indeed the changes in the sun, which we know is going into a solar minimum. But there is more to the story about what's happening to the sun. Believe it or not, researchers have just recently found out that the actual outer layer, the sun's outer layer of the atmosphere, is actually thinning. This is completely separate to the solar minimum. This is something new that they've never seen before that is happening on the sun that they've got confirmation of just now. They've got confirmation that the sun's outer layer is thinning. What does this mean? What can this happen? What does that mean for us here on Earth? Well, it means by 2019, we are going to be well into the new solar minimum. It could well be that Earth will freeze over. It could well be that there will be a landlock between England and France. It could well be that the Hudson River will freeze over again, and we will see another Maunder minimum occur just about everywhere on Earth. It could well be. I don't know for sure, but certainly it is well worth our time keeping an eye on what's happening under the Earth, on the Earth, and of course, as Earth Changes Radio always does, what's happening above the Earth. Go ahead there, Earthplay.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, I do need to make a public correction from last week. I told you that we're moving into the Grand Eddy minimum, which is correct. It is correct reporting. However, I spelled it EDDE, and it's actually EDDY. So there you go. You guys, we even correct our own mistakes here on earthchangesradio.com. But the solar activity, we actually had a little burp the other day, Steve. We on the 4th of July, I believe, I'm just going by memory, at least in the last week, we had a little blip, a little sunspot, a little area of activity that turned into the Earth's direction, so they're a little bit worried about it. If it popped, it could do some damage to our satellites. But we did have an M1 emission, not a flare, emissions coming off of this sunspot. So there has been one spotted, and it is currently aimed right at the Earth. So there have been a few geomagnetic storms, but I don't think there's anything to worry about. But absolutely, I think that the scientists have come to, and science is not about a consensus, but there is a consensus among the solar physicists that we are most likely have moved into the very least a Dalton minimum. Now, a Maunder minimum is the same thing as a Dalton minimum. And I don't think that we're going to be locked in a global ball of ice, Steve. Although they are calling this a grand solar minimum, they think that it's going to be worse than the Maunder minimum, that it's going to be worse than the Dalton minimum, because these values are much less than they were in those particular eras of solar minimums. So they're calling this a grand one. But that does not mean snowball Earth. It could if other factors snowball in on top of it, and no good disaster ever goes without any complications. But you're going to see a couple of degree rise, a lowering of the temperatures. It's going to get a little bit cooler in the northern latitudes. It's going to snow a little bit more ferociously. It's going to stay on the ground a little bit longer. The seasons are going to get broken up because of flooding and raining, and we're already experiencing all that. We already have snow on the ground that did not melt or will not melt during this summer, and that's how it begins. The mountains of California may start to grow glaciers. There are already glaciers on Mount Lassen and Mount Shasta. There are 7, and they're growing. So this is how it happens, a little bit at a time, where we won't be able to grow our food. And surprisingly to me, Steve, and I always thought that the Midwest of America, Kansas, Oklahoma, and all the way up into the Dakotas was the wheat and soy breadbasket of the world. Well, much to my chagrin, over the last decade, that has actually moved up to Canada. Canada is now the breadbasket of wheat and barley and grains, even corn. They're overtaking the breadbasket of the United States. As the temperatures get cooler, that grain belt moves up to the north. Well, we can expect that to start now moving back down towards the United States if, these solar conditions and these Maunder minimums, these Dalton minimums, now the Grand Eddy minimum play out the way that they believe. It'll start moving everything further and further south, and people in Canada may even have to migrate down to the United States. And you've heard me say it 100 times, Steve. If I've said it one time, I've said it 100 times. We don't need to be building a wall across Mexico. We need to be building that wall across Canada. Go ahead.
Well, some important news in politics here, Earthplay, that I wish to share with you and the public. Very, very interestingly, there's going to be a new branch of government formed by the House Armed Services Committee, who basically voted 60-1 in favor of creation of a new military branch to be called the United States Space Corps. We are getting very, very close to Starship Troopers with the armies now in space. Amazing. That they want to have their own space army if they don't have already. Yes, the United States Space Corps is what they will be called. Incredible stuff. That we're going to have Muppets in space, basically. I can't wait for that. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio. Stay with us right here on what is possibly the #1 show on the internet.
Hey, this is Timothy Paul. Welcome to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Welcome to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Good evening, this is Rob Cash, and you're listening live to Rick and Steve on a Terraforming Earth Network on paltalk.com.
Hello, this is Frank Weltner from QWatch.com, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio. We hope you will participate.
Hi, this is Girl Bond, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on Terraforming Earth Network. How's that? Yeah?
Hello, this is Fluke 2. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. Well done, guys.
Okay, for fuck's sakes, this is Suicide Blonde 44. And you're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Network. For fuck's sakes, can you hear me? You do that on purpose. Y'all just love to get me to fucking yell. I swear to God, y'all love.
With over 150 million registered users, Paltalk is the largest online chat community in the world. With over 300 Paltalk support staff speaking dozens of languages to help you enjoy your online experience. Meet new people across town, country, or continent while chatting about your interests. Sing live karaoke, listen to music, join a lively political debate, or play group trivia in one of thousands of chat rooms in various categories from your PC, your tablet, or mobile device. Joining Paltalk is free and easy. Go to paltalk.com and become part of our friendly community today.
Hi, my name is Earth Angel, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on paltalk.com.
Hi, my name is Scott, also known as Great Message. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on paltalk.com. Cow, it's been so long since I used this thing, I forgot how to turn the mic on.
Hi, my name is Chuck Norris, and we're kicking ass to Earth Changes Radio at paltalk.com.
Hello, my name is Michael Caine, and you are listening to Earth Change Radio on paltalk.com.
You are listening to radio. What's it called again?
Earth Changes Radio.com.
Hello, my name is Cheryl, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
My name is Mindy's mum, and I mop floors when I listen to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Hi, I'm Ruby, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com with Rick and Steve.
My name is MW, and I have found peace from horse shit.
Yes, is our very favorite, our very wonderful, one of the best guys here in the chat room who does keep his ammunition very, very clean. That's Mr. MW. Thank you, sir, for that. You know, very, very interesting story I found just recently that adds to the theory of panspermia. That is the Earth being seeded by other material in the cosmos. Well, here is some confirmation. Comet 67P has been found to be producing That's producing, not just expelling, but producing its own oxygen in deep space. These are comets that are spreading oxygen, spreading material, spreading gases across our universe and across our solar system. Well, this is happening just near Earth itself. This comet is actually within our solar system, and it's been found to be producing its own oxygen. This is an amazing story. I really want to know what you think of this one, Earthplay. Go ahead, sir, your mic.
I am actually not familiar with that specific comet, Steve, but I am familiar with another one that's called Comet 17P, and the P means periodic, so it comes back. Holmes, 17P Holmes, which the last time we saw it was, I believe, in 2007, where its corona, the magnetic field around this thing, was larger than Jupiter. As it came through our solar system. It was very spectacular, very exciting event. What turns out to have happened is Comet 17P Holmes was a clump of comets that broke up. It broke up into a handful of smaller comets. Therefore, its nucleus and its coma was larger than that even of Jupiter as it moved. So as it approached the solar wind, what happened is that comet actually broke up, Steve, and ended up spraying through the solar system like a shotgun blast. And as it left our solar system, the mass of all the smaller comets were reattracted to one another, forming back up into one massive nucleus again. And this is the one that I'm waiting for to come back to our solar system, Comet 17P Holmes, because we expect it to act exactly the way that it did last time, if not even more fragile than it was the last time it came through our solar system, spraying through the solar system like a shotgun blast. And we can very well see that again. And one more comment, I see that we have people that want to come up to the mic and join us here. You made a comment just before the break, Muppets in Space, that the United States wants to form its own Space Corps. Well, Steve, we're still hitchhiking rides from those dastardly, corrupt and evil Russians. We can't even get our butts into space, and we're going to start a Space Corps. Well, good luck to them, Steve. And now we have a guest coming up to the mic. Sonic Nomad, hey, welcome to the Earth Changes Radio program. We welcome your contributions. It's your mic.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I can be heard. Can I get a 1, hopefully? Can I get a 1? Oh, thank goodness. All right, well, I want to get back to the panspermia. Now, the Drake equation notwithstanding, that equation, of course, is to estimate the chances of a civilization being mature enough and having certain aspects occur that would make them around long enough to... oh, I'm sorry, that's my air conditioner. It's almost 90 degrees outside, and I must let that creaking thing go because it's so hot. It's been real hot here lately. We hit 106 last week. Very unusual for the Silicon Valley to hit that. But anyway, back onto the panspermia, which, you know, if you look at things like the reflector retrieved from the moon, laser reflector for distance estimations by lasers, and also on, I believe it was the International Space Station, had a experimental package outside, stayed outside about a year and a half, I think, and they were still able to bring back the microbes back to life from this state of being out in space, essentially. Now, it's not deep space, which would then preclude any magnetic protection you would get, but I mean, you figure if all these things are flying around bumping into stuff, I would think that that's a pretty solid evidence for that to come. Next on mic is Nephilim. Thank you for the time.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Sonic Nomad. It certainly sounded like you have a dozen people there working on abacuses behind you, counting up their cash. But nevertheless, it's very, very good to hear people who know their stuff and share their information with us. In fact, California is so hot right now. believe it or not, that over 10,000 cattle and livestock have died during the hot spell. So many that have engulfed that region, so many cows have died and so many horses have died that the rendering plant in Kerman, California has been overwhelmed and has told people do not bring any more livestock. They cannot handle what they've got at the moment. They're suggesting that farmers bury their herds, the ones that are dying, because they can't afford the feed, they can't afford the water. And these are just all kinds of animals, exactly. The wildlife is perishing because of the heat waves that are happening in America at the moment. And this, as we talked about, is, I believe, a direct result of the changing sun, of the changing cosmic rays that are hitting Earth, of the changing magnetosphere that is allowing more rays to come into Earth and affecting our planet completely. Go ahead there, Earthplay. What do you make of that?
Well, it's horrible. It's a horrible situation, and it just compounds what we're seeing in the sixth massive extinction that is now taking place. In the first half of the program, you heard of the extinctions and the mass animal die-offs only for this last week, and only this last week alone. But I want to get into some of the more serious things that are going on. Do you realize that while we were doing our last show, Steve, on the 4th of July, celebrating our independence and recognizing all of the countries that are fighting for their independence from us, how ironic is that, we were talking about the volcano Bogolof, B-O-G-O-L-O-F, Bogolof, in the Aleutian Islands, and how this thing was one of the most peculiar and odd volcanoes to erupt in our civilization that we've ever witnessed. I mean, because we're used to seeing magma and rock and debris and ash and pumice and sulfur dioxide, but this one is venting and erupting all of the above, plus huge quantities of acid, creating acid lakes of acid, physical lakes in the Pacific Ocean. It's stratifying the ocean, it's acidifying the ocean in the Arctic Circle, the same thing that our government tried to blame us for. Well, on the 4th of July, this volcano had its most ferocious eruption on record yet, and every one of these eruptions have been catastrophic. They didn't think that it could get much worse. Well, it did. Not only did that volcano erupt with such ferocity that several hundred miles away, far away in Alaska, that Mount Cleveland actually erupted simultaneously. And that's not it. There are lots of volcanoes that erupted within the same hour of the same day in different portions of the Earth. Now, I'm getting an alert here from the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center in Washington, the state of Washington, who is issuing volcanic ash advisory for aircraft because of this Mount Renovitar up in Alaska as well. And the Kamakacha volcanoes, there are 12 of them there, are erupting, and we're getting volcanic ash advisory from the center in Tokyo all the way to the state of Washington on the west coast of the United States. Sinabung, again, in Sumatra, Indonesia, has erupted again, sending emissions 7 miles into the stratosphere. This is very unusual. It shows just how hot and convective that these volcanic eruptions are. We have volcanic ash advisories from Buenos Aires. All air traffic within 400 miles has been suspended. You can't get near the place. You can't get a flight out. You can't get a flight in. And there are many more. We had 37 erupting volcanoes today. Mount Bogolof is one of them. Mount Cleveland and Polof, and actually one here at Fort Selkirk in Alaska have all erupted in this last week. That's 4 volcanoes in Alaska. And Bogolof is still erupting. Stromboli is erupting right now in Italy with some of the most uh, vigorous volcanic activity that has been witnessed there since it last erupted in 1942. Mount Etna is the same thing. And there's a third volcano in Portugal that did erupt momentarily, and I can't pronounce the name of it, and I wouldn't even try. Mount Popo in central Mexico is erupting with a ferocity. It has not stopped. It has been erupting for over 2 weeks. Now that's kind of unusual. Usually you have like an 8 or a 10 or a 12 or even a 20-hour eruption, and then it'll subside for 8 or 10 or 20 hours, and then erupt again over the course of days and weeks. But not this one. This is one of the largest volcanoes in central Mexico, near Mexico City, that is erupting with a ferocity that is drawing volcanologists and tourists from all over the world. In Guatemala, the Santiaguito volcano is erupting. The Fuego volcano in Guatemala is erupting. The Payacan volcano in Guatemala is erupting. They're just having a horrible time with the volcanoes down there. And this is the ancestral land of the Mayans, Steve, of the ancient Maya. And I don't like to sound like a doomer gloomer, but remember the Mayan calendar, the prophecies of the summer solstice of December 21st of 2012. Well, we didn't discover until about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that we made a horrible mistake, that we translated that calendar based on the Gregorian calendar of 365 days, when the Mayan calendar was a 360 day and degree calendar. It was a round calendar, the calendar of the compass and of the heavens and astronomical. It's actually a perfect calendar. Actually translates to this year, September the 23rd of 2017. And with all these volcanoes, this rift opening up across Chile, and one of the first calderas ever witnessed by human civilization, because there are no humans on the earth that have ever seen a caldera open up until now, which is happening at the Chilean volcano, but it seems to have mended itself and the surface has cooled. It is no longer erupting. There is no visible lava at the surface, but this is probably just a temporary thing. And there is just so much more to report here on Changes Radio at earthchangesradio.com, exclusively on Pal Talk every Tuesday night. And look at this. We have another chat participant, Sonic Nomad. Welcome back to the mic.
Thank you. Hopefully this doesn't sound quite as bad. I had to turn off the AC, brave the heat, just for a last little thing to mention about what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, you've got different kinds of eruptions. Hawaiian, you can see the big flows of the hydro, the kind you would think of, as opposed to the pyroclastic flows, which I'm sure we all know that Pompeii, and like we had Mount St. Helens. And Mount St. Helens was nothing compared to Pompeii, of course, and those were really the most incredibly dangerous. The Yellowstone caldera notwithstanding as well. Those kinds of explosions and sending the ash is just tremendous damage, especially if they're near water. And there's scientific evidence, of course, in Alaska, of the 9.6 earthquake, which caused a 200-foot surge, miniature tsunami in the wave. But just to touch back on the other thing about the reference to the solar, our poles, sometimes they shift and slowly change. Sometimes they quickly change. We have the sea spreading, of course, to look at the magnetic elements that were frozen in time. So I'm not sure how far back that goes, but I would assume animals have been through. So obviously, it's going to freak them out for a while, but I'm sure that they will learn it. So, but who knows? It could cause a lot of anarchy as well. Thanks for the mic time. Go ahead, Nephilim.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Sonic Nomad. Got some very, very interesting stories I want to share with everybody here. We all know that if you want to go off the grid, if you want to do your own thing, then it's up to you to start growing and start producing your own herbs and doing your own garden, making your own supplements, making your own food. Well, that's what the Amish have always done. The Amish have always looked after themselves and grown subsistently. They've always done their own thing. And they've always used organic products with that. Now, an Amish man has been given a 6-year sentence for growing and selling his own herbal remedies. This is getting ridiculous. The Amish have always done this. Since when has growing your own food and selling it been a problem? Well, it is when the government wants you to buy it from the corporations. Another story is Israel are buying drones armed with machine guns, and they use it for crowded civilian areas. Does this sound like a government or a people or a nation that give a rat's ass about people when they're buying drones armed with machine guns? That sounds a little bit scary to me. Now imagine if the United States had that, and they could just open fire on people protesting. I think this is where we are headed. Go ahead there, Earthplay. Your mic, sir.
Thank you, Steve. And we're moving into our last segment, and it is our chat participation segment. So hello to everybody in the chat room. I want to say hello to Wendy, who just came in, and Rose, who just came in, and a couple other folks. There's a question here in the chat room from Mercy Me, Steve, asking about the Yellowstone National Caldera and what's going on there. And we did cover that a little bit earlier in the show. But for those of you who are just joining us, and it is a chat question, so we will revisit this. There have been pictures and rumors of a magma fountain being photographed and spread across the internet, especially on Facebook, of an eruption at Yellowstone, which is not true. There is no physical magma present at Yellowstone. However, there have been, we talked about the animals leaving the park and the various reasons that were given for the animal population at Yellowstone to be either moving away from the park or being thin within the park. But there has been a lot of mounding and deforestation because of the heating of the ground. Mud pots and steam, even creeks are warming up. The road to Firehole Road to Old Faithful and to Yosemite Lodge, did I say that? Yellowstone Lodge, was melting and temporarily closed, and I think that's fixed. So, and a lot of problems with the inundation of the North Norris Basin region where the lake is inundated, a forest to the south, which continues, and the mounding continues. There's been some outgassing in the form of steam and geysers that have not erupted in, say, decades, but nothing super unusual. However, small swarms of earthquakes do plague Yellowstone as they have for years and years and years. And that's about it. We did have that 5.8 earthquake up there in Lincoln, Montana, north of the caldera and the park, and revisited by swarms of earthquakes that have continued right up to the airtime tonight, Steve.
Well, you know, sir, Mr. Earthplay, about 2 weeks ago, right here on Earth Changes Radio, I reported that the Chinese had done a successful test in quantum communications. That was about 2 weeks ago on this particular show, on this very show right here. Well, guess what? The Chinese have actually finished their tests of the quantum communication network, and they expect to have a quantum communication network operating, actually working in 2 months' time. That is phenomenal. To have such a fantastic, amazing communication system built on quantum computing is quite a feat, and it's quite a challenge. But it looks like the Chinese have done it. And talking about amazing things, this certainly does not fit into that. What does Facebook do with its $180 billion in assets and profit? What do you do when you have that much money? What can you spend it on? What can you possibly buy? Well, believe it or not, Facebook want to buy their own private city. They want to build their own private city. Not content with creating the globe's biggest online social network and stealing everybody's information in the world, Facebook are now planning to build a large community for its employees. What it basically is an entire city, a planned community, a gated community that will be made available first to their own employees. It's going to have a retail space, it's going to have a grocery store, a shopping mall, a pharmacy, it's going to have all kinds of things. But is this what it's come down to, where people with enough money can build their own cities in certain states? I think that's a bit ridiculous. I think Facebook, I think they should be shut down. That's my opinion. I can't stand them. I think they're assholes, just to be honest. Your mic, sir.
Well, realistically, Steve, I think that that's the wave of the future. We already have bricked off communities, private communities, and membership shopping and things of that nature. I think that's the way society is moving. And with these earth changes that are upon us, especially the ultraviolets, the cosmic rays, the shrinking land that we will be able to grow food on, our animals dying. These are the animals that we subsist on for food. They're not wild animals. These are farmed animals. We opened the show today with the outbreak of avian flu worldwide that has not, you may hear about it from time to time. But they're not putting any urgency when our own CDC, our own State Department and Pentagon chiefs of staffs' worst fear is the outbreak of a pandemic. We broke the news last week right here, Steve. Bill Gates giving, $5 billion to these causes. So I think it's something we need to start getting used to and gearing ourselves towards. There are already communities like that are breaking out among the public sector. The home ship communities of Taos in Taos, New Mexico, Taos County. I own property there. Actually, it's for sale if anybody's listening to this. Prime real estate in the mountains of Taos County. Also, there are other communities like those in Cydonia, Arizona. Many of them. The hippies tried to start these communals back in the 60s and 70s, and they didn't really work out that well. Very few of them survived. But I think that moving into our immediate future, that these communities are going to have to draw together, and unfortunately, Steve, you're going to have to put up walls. It works in Israel. It works in Russia. It works at the Vatican. It works around the White House. It works around the palaces and the mansions of our politicians. I think that this is just an unfortunate symptom of a growing population with dwindling resources and a changing environment. There are a lot of things to consider, Steve. So my first suggestion to you would be at least have 3 days of food, water, and medicine available for you and family. That's just good common sense. Then that won't even protect you from a natural disaster. Once you have 3 days of food and supplies and medicine, and you have talked to your families, what happens if there's a plane crash in the middle of your city, it cuts your city in half, you have no electricity, no water or anything, and you're at work on one side of town and the kids are at school on another side of town and your house is on another side of town. Well, how do you communicate with all three of these places if the cell towers are jammed up? You need to talk about these things before they happen. Before an earthquake, a tornado, a thunderstorm, a flood. You know, where are your friends and family going to be? What are they going to try to do? And what are their goals going to try to be? These are just very simple things. And then you apply them to larger disasters, which I believe we are facing, Steve. Strap up and cinch up your seatbelt, because we could be in for a really rough ride. And only those that are prepared in the mind and understand that these changes are taking place and they're not temporary and they're not going to go away, and you make some preparation for yourself, you're going to have at least some chance or hope of coming out the other side of this. Because cycles always change. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Earthplay. One of my last stories concerns the United States, which has presented itself to the world always as a beacon of liberty and democracy, as a proponent of human rights and freedom around the world. God bless the USA. Amen. USA. USA. Always ready and willing to stand up for and defend the downtrodden. Amen. We look to the USA as a beacon amongst the rest of the world, but consider for one moment that in the 241 years of America's life, 220 of those have been at war. Is this the kind of freedom that America is spreading across the world? Is this the kind of democracy that they're spreading when they have created more wars on earth than any other empire ever? When they have created more death? When they are directly responsible for the more killings of more human beings than just about anyone on earth? That is Pol Pot, Adolf Hitler, and Stalin combined. The United States has spread death. Exactly, Lady B. Absolutely. And I want people to remember that. A week after Independence Day, we have to remember the other side, the flip side of the barbecue burger and the Miller's beer or the Budweiser beer. There is another side that doesn't taste so good, is not quite as refreshing, and there is more salt and sugar in that drink than you can possibly stomach. This is the land we're living in. This is the land of opportunity and freedom, but it certainly is not the land of America. Thanks very much for listening in to Earth Changes Radio today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. I'd like to thank all the sponsors, which include Organite by Mishkaites. It includes BigMagazine.com, and of course, the Southwest Backpacker. Big thanks go out to all the admins today, Orangutan, Love is Light, Ruby Today, and of course, Mr. Earthplay himself, a fantastic host. Hope you enjoyed the show and be back here again next week. God bless you all, take care, and of course, bye for now. 3 months for our stories to suddenly make it to the news media, for the things we talk about to make it onto the headlines. And I mean, that's pretty good. Usually it takes years. Usually it takes a couple of years, but this time, what we've been talking about is only taking a couple of months to make it to the media. So I think that there is some hope yet that we will hear the alarm bells ringing about waking up to what's going on in the world and what's happening in space and what is indeed happening in our own cosmos in our backyard. A lot of people are starting to be more aware of what exactly is going on and what exactly we can do to mitigate the outcome and possibilities of a final extinction involving human beings, which I certainly hope does not happen. Good to see everybody there. I hope you're enjoying the show. Go ahead there, Earthplay, right about now, sir. The mic is yours.
And of course, yes, I just rushed right into the beginning of the show. A great shout out to Helen Michelle from the town of Gabrielle. And Matt, the Southwest Backpacker, one of our sponsors, is out of the hospital. As you remember, over the 4th of July, leading an expedition into the Continental Divide of the Rocky Mountains, did suffer a very serious leg injury from his knee to his ankle, requiring a couple of surgeries and 25 stitches. Well, Matt is out of the hospital. He's up and walking around as ornery as usual. I'll probably be seeing him this Friday. But you're absolutely right. You know, Matt's doing great. Steve, just since our last show, talking about the 6th Great Extinction. This is now, mind you, only the last 7 days. In China, in the Hangzhou region, are reporting a large die-off of fish in the river. That all the fish are dead. No reason. There's no nuclear power plants, uranium mines, or anything upstream that they can discern being the cause of this death. Also, more death. Steve, where the heck is the country of Gambia? In the nature preserve of southern Gambia, they have a massive die-off of fish as well. And in a lake in Minnesota, and it's not specific here, thousands of dead fish washing up on a lake in Minnesota. Thousands of fish wash up in a lake in Wisconsin. Alarming number of fish wash up in a lake in Ohio. These states are not next to one another, you may notice. This is just in the last week. 9 pilot whales have been found stranded along Taylor and Dixie County lines in Florida. Thousands of cattle have now died in a massive heat wave in California, just in the last week. Dozens of seabirds, hundreds of fish, plus turtles have been found dead on the beaches of Queensland, Australia. An epidemic in China, and they're at a level 1 watch. It just goes on and on and on. You can learn about this from the World Health Organization, although I don't like these governmental agencies. I prefer on the ground the institutions that are dealing with these, the farmers, the food stock industries. So, Steve, man, I'll tell you, we start to show off with some really serious, very, very serious, alarming news. Why don't we hear about this in our own media, Steve? Hey, today is July 11th. Welcome to the show, Steve, our other host. Good to hear from you, bud.
Well, a very good morning, a very good evening, a very good afternoon to all the listening audiences and to you, Mr. Earthplay, specifically. You know, I got to put out a shout out to our sponsors today for the 20th show of Earth Changes Radio. That includes Organite by Mishkaites. Please do check them out on Facebook. It includes a Southwest Backpacker. It also includes BigWhoopMagazine.com. Sponsoring Earth Changes Radio to get this information out to the public. And one of the first stories I have for today is indeed something we've been talking about for years, and we talked about this with, I believe it was Professor Guy McPherson, about the 6th extinction. And that is now making breaking news on the media. It has only taken 2 or 3...
North America, and this is just for 2017. This is getting a crisis and epidemic levels. The avian flu outbreaks. If you've gone to the supermarket lately trying to buy any ducks, turkeys, chickens, well, you can just imagine what the price and the availability is in this very tight poultry market right now. Over $2 a pound when you used to be able to buy the whole chicken for less than that. Asian avian flu, influenza A, has now been diagnosed as the H7N9 virus. These words. Influenza or flu. And these are the most recent statistics from June 29th of 2017. You can find this also online. Asian lineage avian influenza at www at the cdc.gov/flu/avian flu. It's very easy to find. You don't have to go to the CDC. You don't have to go to the World Health Organization, because it is such an epidemic. It is known to everybody worldwide except for the American people. I wonder why that is, you lying, thieving bastards in the media. Why have not we heard of these things? That avian flu is now...
Welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, episode 20. Earth's alarm bells are ringing. In this episode, the two hosts talk about the changes facing Earth as we go into the next big global shift in ecology. And now, the two guys who make CNN staff worry about their jobs, it's Rick and Steve on the Terraforming Earth Radio Network. Take it away, boys!
Thank you, Carol. Lovely as always. Appreciate you so much. Hello to all my friends, foes, and assorted others out there. Welcome to another episode, our 20th edition. I believe that's right. Welcome to Earth Changes Radio, earthchangesradio.com, exclusively on paltalk.com, every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. If you are suffering from mental illness and or depression, please be advised, well, never mind. You're just going to have to deal with it tonight, because we have some pretty disturbing information, and unfortunately, that is just the way that nature is. My first news story today is kind of urgent, and it's very important that people understand these avian flu outbreaks in North American poultry. This is a huge, huge issue, and you can actually follow this online, track where the avian influenza outbreaks are, and in what poultry flocks in North